Welcome to Delta History, where the battlefield speaks and the truth cuts through the fog of war. The pale winter sun had just begun to climb over the frost-covered fields of eastern Ukraine, casting long shadows across the barren land like silent sentinels. The wind carried the faint scent of smoke from distant shelling, swirling through air so cold it seemed to slice through bone. Each gust rattled loose shards of glass still clinging to window frames in abandoned homes, making the buildings sound like they were whispering secrets from a war they could not escape. Snow clung stubbornly to the ground, pitted with frozen craters from past artillery strikes. The skeletal remains of leafless trees clawed at the sky, their branches black against the washed-out winter light. Nothing moved except the drifting smoke from smoldering ruins on the horizon. It was a frozen wasteland, silent, still, but not safe. Veteran soldiers know this kind of silence. It isn't peace. It's a predator's pause, the kind of unnatural quiet that comes just before violence. The watchers in the attic. In a derelict attic overlooking an open valley, two Ukrainian Special Operations Forces snipers lay prone, pressed tightly against the cold wooden floorboards. Their breath condensed in short clouds inside their balaclavas. These weren't just marksmen. They were members of an elite SOF unit, soldiers forged through years of brutal training in stealth, endurance, and precision shooting. Their rifles, long black instruments of surgical lethality, rested on bipods, muzzles protruding through narrow gaps in a shattered wall. Next to them, a rugged military tablet streamed a live feed from a reconnaissance drone circling invisibly high above. The spotter, his eyes locked on the tablet's display, murmured into the comms. Movement, 6 o'clock, 900 meters. Confirm visual. Through his scope, the lead sniper, call sign Hunter, adjusted his zoom. Slowly, shapes emerged from the pale mist. 6 men in winter camouflage, moving in a staggered line across the field. Their formation was precise. 2 scouts forward, a radio operator in the center, flanked by riflemen, with a rear guard scanning their trail. They moved like men who had done this many times before, but they had made one fatal error. They were crossing open terrain in clear daylight, with only the brittle shadows of winter to hide them. The stakes at Pokrovsk. For over a week, Pokrovsk's defenses had been probed by Russian reconnaissance units. Their orders were simple: get close enough to identify trench layouts, mark artillery targets, and disappear before Ukrainian forces could react. This sector was a keystone in Pokrovsk's defense. If the Russians broke through here, they could open a corridor straight into Ukraine's eastern lifeline. The SOF sniper team had been deployed to this position precisely to prevent that. Their orders? Intercept any recon patrols before they could pass valuable coordinates back to Russian artillery. The night before, Hunter and his partner, callsign Ghost, had crawled into position under cover of darkness. They had studied the terrain, plotted multiple firing lanes, memorized wind readings, and preset their scopes for the most likely approach routes. The drone overhead had confirmed their instincts. This was the main Russian recon element for the morning, the first shot. Hunter's breathing slowed to a rhythm. Inhale, exhale, hold. His heartbeat was steady, every muscle locked in place. The crosshairs of his scope hovered over the chest of the Russian radio operator. That man was the key. Without him, the patrol would lose its ability to call in artillery strikes or report intel. Target 1, center mass. On your mark, whispered Ghost. Hunter's gloved finger squeezed the trigger. The shot cut through the frigid air with a muted crack. At nearly a kilometer away, the bullet reached its target before the sound could betray its source. The radio operator jerked once and crumpled into the snow, his equipment sliding from his grasp. Chaos erupted in the Russian formation. The scouts dropped low, rifles sweeping the tree line. The rear guard turned, searching desperately for the source of the shot. They didn't know that the SOF team was already moving. Changing positions. Hunter and Ghost slid backward, bodies flush against the attic floor, then crawled silently to their secondary firing point just meters away. This was the rule. Never fire twice from the same position. Snipers who broke that rule didn't last long. The second shot came seconds later. Ghost took it this time. The lead scout fell mid-stride, his momentum carrying him face first into the snow. The Russians were beginning to understand. They weren't facing random gunfire. This was a professional ambush. Panic began to erode their discipline. The trap closes. In their rush to recover the wounded, 2 soldiers broke from cover, exposing themselves to the valley. Hunter's scope tracked the first. Crack, down. Ghost's rifle found the second. Crack, silent. 4 of the 6 Russians were now out of the fight. The remaining 2 hesitated, glancing at each other, before deciding to retreat. They left their dead behind, abandoning radios, maps, and weapons as they sprinted for the nearest tree line. Hunter didn't shoot. That wasn't the mission. The priority now was to secure the intelligence they had left behind. Aftermath. Within minutes, a Ukrainian infantry squad, guided by the overhead drone, entered the valley. They moved swiftly, sweeping the area and collecting everything the Russians had carried. What they found confirmed every fear. Detailed trench maps, supply convoy schedules, and encrypted communication codes. Back at the command post, officers examined the recovered intel under harsh fluorescent lights. It revealed a planned Russian artillery strike on Pokrovsk's supply network within 48 hours. Thanks to the snipers, that operation was now impossible. The message sent. By nightfall, word of the ambush had spread along the Russian lines. Recon patrols began avoiding the sector entirely. Those who still ventured near Pokrovsk did so with extreme caution. Every shadow, every abandoned building now seemed like it could hide the watchful eyes of an unseen rifle. For Hunter and Ghost, it was another mission completed. No medals, no headlines. Their names would never be known beyond the tight circle of their unit. But they knew the truth, that in the frozen quiet of that valley, they had saved countless Ukrainian lives. As darkness returned and snow began to fall again, the valley erased the day's violence. Wind swept over the field, covering footprints, swallowing echoes. But the silence that followed was different now. It wasn't the calm before the storm. It was a warning. This field is watched, and the watchers never miss. This is Delta history. The war is still being written, and we will be here to tell it.